I've always been the practical one in my family. While my older brother Bart was busy chasing his dreams of becoming a successful businessman, I focused on climbing the corporate ladder step by step. That approach finally paid off when I landed a position at Crawford & Associates with a salary that made my previous job look like pocket change. The only downside? The commute was killing me. 2 hours each way meant I was spending 4 hours a day just getting to and from work. After 2 weeks of this nightmare, I knew I had to find a place closer to the office. That Saturday, I went to my parents' house for our traditional family dinner. Mom was in the kitchen, stirring something that smelled amazing, while Dad sat in his favorite armchair, reading the newspaper. It felt like every other Saturday dinner we'd had since I was a kid. "How's the new job going, honey?" Mom asked as she placed a steaming casserole on the table. "Actually, really good," I replied, helping her set the table. "The only problem is the commute. I'm looking for a new place to rent closer to work." That's when I noticed my parents exchange one of those looks they'd perfected over their 30 years of marriage. Mom wiped her hands on her apron and sat down. "You know, Amber," she said, "we might have a solution for you. Remember Grandma Helen's old apartment? The one I inherited? Our tenants just moved out last week, and it's literally a 5-minute walk from your new office." I nearly dropped the fork I was holding. Of course I remembered that apartment. I'd spent countless weekends there as a kid when Grandma Helen was still alive. It was a cozy 2-bedroom place in a quiet neighborhood, with huge windows and a small balcony where Grandma used to grow her beloved petunias. "How much would the rent be?" I asked, trying not to sound too eager. Mom named a figure that made my eyes widen. It was about 1.5 times less than the average market price in that area. "We'd give you a family discount, of course," she added with a smile. "I'll take it," I said immediately, not even trying to negotiate. The location was perfect, and the price was unbeatable. "That's settled then," Dad said, finally looking up from his newspaper. "Now, did you hear about your brother's latest success? He just landed 3 new corporate clients for his courier company. He's really making it big in the delivery business." And just like that, the conversation shifted to their favorite topic, Bart's achievements. I sat there, pushing food around my plate, nodding at appropriate intervals as my parents gushed about how their son was becoming a successful entrepreneur. It was always like this: Bart was the golden child, the risk-taker, the one who dared to dream big. I was just Amber. Moving day was surprisingly quick. The real shock came when I walked into Grandma Helen's apartment with the first box in my hands. The place was, let's just say, the previous tenants hadn't exactly treated it like their own. The walls were covered in dated wallpaper that was peeling at the corners, there were mysterious stains on the ceiling, and the only piece of furniture was this ancient sofa that looked like it had survived several wars. I called Mom that evening, sitting cross-legged on that old sofa, the only place to sit in the entire apartment. "Hey, Mom? Would it be okay if I did some renovations?" She sounded distracted, probably watching one of her cooking shows. "Oh, sure, honey. Just don't make it too bright. You know how I feel about those trendy neon colors everyone's using these days." I had to laugh at that. "Mom, have you ever seen me wear anything brighter than navy blue? Trust me, I'm thinking more along the lines of earth tones and neutrals." That night, I dove deep into the internet, browsing through interior design websites and Pinterest boards. I created a whole mood board with my vision: warm grays, soft beiges, and the occasional deep blue accent. Everything would be understated but elegant, comfortable but put together. Just like me, I guess. The next few months became a blur of work and renovation. I'd come home from the office, change into old clothes, and get to work. First came the wallpaper removal. Then there was the painting, which taught me that just one more coat is rarely just one more coat. Furniture shopping became my new weekend hobby. I'd spend hours in stores, testing sofas, measuring spaces, and comparing prices. Piece by piece, I built my home. A comfortable gray sectional that was perfect for movie nights. A solid wood dining table that could seat 6. A plush area rug that tied everything together. The transformation took 6 months of weekends and evenings, but finally, it was done. Looking around at my finished apartment, I felt a surge of pride so strong it almost brought tears to my eyes. I had done this. When Mom came to see the finished result, I was nervous. She walked through each room slowly, running her hand along the new kitchen countertops, examining the carefully chosen light fixtures, studying the subtle pattern on the wallpaper in the bedroom. "Amber," she said finally, turning to face me. "This is remarkable." I nearly fell over. Mom wasn't exactly free with her compliments, especially when it came to me. But there she was, actually smiling, actually impressed. "You did all this yourself?" she asked, gesturing around the living room. I nodded, trying not to look too pleased with myself. "Well, YouTube tutorials helped a lot." "It's beautiful," she said, and then did something she hadn't done in years. She hugged me. A real hug, not one of those quick, obligatory ones she usually gave me at family gatherings. 2 weeks later, I headed to another family dinner, practically bouncing with excitement. I'd gotten a promotion at work, senior account manager, with a nice salary bump and my own team to lead. I couldn't wait to share the news. "Mom, Dad," I said during a lull in the conversation, "I have some good news. I got promoted at work." Mom barely glanced up from her plate. "That's nice, dear." She turned to Dad, her voice dropping. "Have you heard from Bart today?" That's when the real dinner conversation started. Turned out my brother's courier company was in trouble. A bigger competitor had moved into town, some national chain with fancy tracking apps and lower prices. Bart's clients were jumping ship faster than rats from a sinking vessel. "We're going to help him," Dad announced, pushing his plate away. "We've decided to take out a loan." I nearly choked on my water. "A loan? Look, maybe this is actually an opportunity. If he can't compete with this bigger company, maybe it's time to try something else. Starting over might be better than throwing good money after bad." The silence that followed was deafening. Mom and Dad exchanged one of their looks, not the fond ones they usually shared, but the kind that said they were disappointed in me. Again. "You don't understand business, Amber," Dad said finally, his voice stern. "You've always played it safe with your office jobs. Your brother is an entrepreneur. He takes risks. Family always helps family," Mom added firmly. "That's what we do." I opened my mouth to argue, then closed it again. What was the point? They'd already made up their minds. I could have told them I'd discovered the cure for cancer, and they'd still be more concerned about Bart's delivery vans. The next 6 months were like watching a slow-motion car crash. Mom would call occasionally to update me on the situation, though I never asked. The loan they took out bought Bart some new vans and helped him lower his prices, but it wasn't enough. The competitor kept expanding, kept taking clients, kept pushing their fancy app and next-day delivery promises. Then came the call I'd been expecting all along. "Your brother's company went bankrupt," Mom said, her voice tight with emotion. "He and Sarah have moved in with us temporarily. Just until they get back on their feet." I gripped my phone tighter, thinking about my quiet prediction at that dinner 6 months ago. "I'm sorry to hear that," I said, because what else could I say? "I told you so?" "They're sleeping in your old room," Mom continued. "Sarah's taking it pretty hard. You know how she is about appearances." Yeah, I knew how my sister-in-law was. Sarah had always looked down her nose at my simple office job, preferring to remind everyone at family gatherings that she was married to a CEO. I wondered how she was handling living with her in-laws now. That weekend, I drove to my parents' house, telling myself it was just another family dinner. But as soon as I walked through the door, the tension in the air was thick enough to cut with a knife. Bart was sprawled on the living room couch, scrolling through his phone. He barely looked up when I entered, offering only a grunt that might have been hey. Sarah was perched on the armchair like she was sitting on a throne, her designer handbag placed carefully at her feet. She gave me one of her trademark looks, the kind that suggested I was something she'd found stuck to her shoe. "Dinner's ready," Mom called, and we all gathered around the table. I should have known better than to hope for a quiet meal. Bart launched into what felt like a rehearsed speech about his business troubles, before I'd even picked up my fork. "I had everything under control," he insisted, gesturing with his knife. "The business was growing. We were expanding. Then these corporate vultures moved in with their fancy technology and deep pockets. They probably spent millions on marketing," Sarah added, pushing her food around her plate. "How is a small business supposed to compete with that?" "Exactly," Bart slammed his hand on the table, making the glasses rattle. "They're just bullies with bigger budgets. And don't get me started on those idiots at the bank who wouldn't extend our credit line. Complete morons who wouldn't know a good business opportunity if it bit them in the..." "Maybe," I interrupted, unable to help myself, "this is just how business works. Competition is part of the game. You have to plan for these possibilities when you start a company." The silence that followed was absolute. 4 pairs of eyes stared at me like I'd just suggested we should all start eating rocks for breakfast. "Plan?" Bart sneered. "Easy for you to say from your cushy office job. What do you know about running a real business?" "I just think," I started, but Dad's warning look made me shut my mouth. I focused on my plate instead, pushing my peas into neat little rows. "I can't take living here much longer," Sarah announced suddenly, her voice dripping with dissatisfaction. "No offense," she added, not sounding sorry at all, "but I need my own space." Bart immediately perked up, like a puppet on strings. "Hey, Mom, what about Grandma Helen's old apartment? You still own that, right?" My head snapped up. "I'm living there," I said quickly. "And I've renovated it completely." "Oh yes," Mom nodded, suddenly animated. "Amber's done a wonderful job with the place. It looks absolutely beautiful now." I saw the look that passed between Bart and Sarah, quick, calculating, meaningful. Something cold settled in my stomach, but I pushed the feeling away. I was being paranoid. They wouldn't, would they? Wednesday evening, I was coming home from work, my mind already on the leftovers waiting in my fridge and the new Netflix series I'd been saving. But when I reached my floor, I stopped dead in my tracks. There were voices coming from my apartment, familiar voices. I opened my door to find Mom, Bart, and Sarah standing in my living room like they owned the place. Sarah was running her hand along the new curtains I'd hung just last month. "Mom?" I tried to keep my voice steady. "What's going on? You could have called to say you were coming over." Mom waved her hand dismissively, not even looking at me. "Don't be ridiculous, Amber. This is my apartment, I don't need permission to visit." My mouth went dry. Something about her tone sent warning bells ringing through my head. I watched as Sarah continued her tour of my apartment, inspecting everything like she was a real estate agent doing an evaluation. She ran her fingers along the new kitchen counter I'd installed, peered into the freshly painted bathroom, and nodded approvingly at the built-in bookshelves I'd added to the living room. Finally, she settled herself on the sofa, the old one I'd kept from before the renovation, and smiled that cat-got-the-cream smile of hers. "This is perfect. We can move in next week." The world seemed to tilt sideways. "Excuse me? I live here. This is my home, I renovated it." "I'm the owner," Mom cut in, her voice sharp. "I decide who lives here. But all the work I did." I gestured around at the walls I'd painted, the floors I'd refinished, the countless hours of labor I'd poured into this place. "I transformed this apartment." "Oh yes," Mom's smile turned calculating. "Actually, since you've improved the apartment so much, the market value has gone up significantly. If you want to stay, the new rent will be 3 times what you're paying now." The blood drained from my face as everything clicked into place. They'd planned this. Mom knew I couldn't afford triple the rent, my promotion was good, but not that good. "You're trying to force me out," I said, my voice barely a whisper. Mom shrugged, not even bothering to deny it. "If you can't afford the new rent, You should probably start looking for another place. You have a week to move out." Without waiting for my response, they headed for the door. Sarah was already on her phone, presumably making moving plans. Bart hadn't said a word the entire time. He didn't need to. Mom paused in the doorway, but didn't turn around. "1 week," she repeated, then pulled the door shut behind them. I stood in the middle of my living room, the living room I had painted, decorated, made into a home, and felt the walls closing in. The proud warmth I'd felt showing Mom my renovation just months ago turned to ashes in my mouth. While my family probably expected me to spend that evening crying into my pillow, I was already on my phone, scrolling through rental listings. By midnight, I'd found the perfect place, a modern one-bedroom, just 2 blocks from my office. The rent was higher than what I'd been paying Mom, but I didn't care. First thing Thursday morning, I called in sick to work for the first time in 3 years. By 9 a.m., I'd toured the new apartment. By 10 a.m., I'd signed the lease and paid the deposit. The landlord, a no-nonsense woman named Janet, raised an eyebrow when I asked if I could move in immediately. Next stop, a moving company. I found one that specialized in same-day moves and didn't mind paying the rush fee. While waiting for them to arrive, I went through my apartment, no, Mom's apartment, with post-it notes, marking everything I'd bought with my own money. The movers arrived at 2 p.m. I stood in the living room, directing traffic like a conductor. The gray sectional? Mine. The dining table and chairs? Mine. All the kitchen appliances except the stove and fridge? Mine. Those bookshelves? I installed them myself, they're coming too. Item by item, my things went into the truck. The coffee maker I'd splurged on after my promotion. The memory foam mattress I'd bought during a Black Friday sale. The TV mount I'd installed myself after watching 3 different YouTube tutorials. Everything I'd purchased to make this place a home, all of it went into boxes and onto the truck. When they finished, the apartment looked almost exactly as it had the day I moved in. Empty walls. Bare floors. And that old sofa sitting alone in the middle of the living room like a captain going down with his ship. I took one last look around, remembering all the weekends I'd spent painting these walls, all the evening hours I'd invested in making this place beautiful. Then I locked the door, dropped my keys in an envelope, and slipped them under my parents' front door on my way to the new apartment. I spent that night setting up my new apartment, arranging furniture until everything felt right. It wasn't until the next morning that all hell broke loose. The call started at 7 a.m. Mom, Bart, Sarah, Mom again, Bart again. I watched my phone buzz across my new kitchen counter, taking a slow sip of coffee from my relocated coffee maker. After the 6th call, I finally picked up. "How dare you?" Mom's voice exploded through the speaker. "The apartment is completely empty. Your brother and Sarah have nowhere to sleep except that old sofa. You had no right to take all that furniture." I took another sip of coffee, feeling surprisingly calm. Actually, I had every right. I bought everything with my own money. I have all the receipts if you'd like to see them. I left what was there originally, you know, that sofa you were so happy to let me use. There was a moment of silence, then Mom called me something that would have made Grandma Helen wash her mouth out with soap. The call ended with a click. My phone started buzzing again within 30 minutes of Mom's call, this time with message notifications. Bart and Sarah had apparently tag teamed to blow up my messenger app. "You vindictive witch," that was from Sarah. "How dare you take everything? You're just jealous, because Bart's a real entrepreneur and you're just a paper pusher." Bart's messages weren't any better. "You selfish piece of work. You've always been jealous of my success. Now you're trying to punish us just because we're going through a rough patch. Real classy, sis. Real classy." The messages kept coming, each one more vitriolic than the last. According to my dear brother and his wife, I was greedy, heartless, vindictive, petty, cruel, selfish, and, my personal favorite, a soulless corporate drone who wouldn't know family loyalty if it bit her in the face. I read each message once, then closed the app without responding. Instead of engaging with their drama, I threw myself into settling into my new place. I arranged my furniture, decorated the walls, and started building a new life. A month passed without any contact from my family. I'd love to say I didn't think about them, but that would be a lie. Every now and then, I'd catch myself wondering how they were doing, if they'd managed to furnish the apartment, if Mom still made her famous lasagna for Sunday dinners. But I pushed those thoughts away each time they surfaced. They'd made their choice. Then, exactly 1 month after the move, my phone lit up with Mom's number. I almost didn't answer. But some combination of curiosity and lingering hope made me pick up. "The red payment didn't come through," she said without preamble, her voice accusatory. I couldn't help it, I laughed. "Of course it didn't. I don't live there anymore, remember? You kicked me out." "That's not the point," Mom snapped. "We're expecting you to continue the payments." My laugh died in my throat. "Excuse me? We're having a very difficult time right now, Amber," she said. "We're still paying off the loan we took out for Bart's business, and he can't afford to pay rent right now. The family needs your help." "Let me get this straight," I said slowly, gripping my phone tighter. "You kicked me out of the apartment so Bart and Sarah could move in, and now you want me to keep paying rent for an apartment I'm not living in, just so they can live there for free?" "Family helps family," Mom said, as if that explained everything. "You know we're struggling with the loan payments, and Bart's still trying to get back on his feet." That phrase again. How many times had I heard it over the years? Always when they needed something from me, never when I needed support myself. Something inside me finally snapped. "Really? Is that what family does?" My voice was surprisingly steady now. "Does family kick one child out onto the street to make room for another? Does family take someone's home away and then demand they keep paying for it?" "You're being dramatic." "No, Mom, I'm being realistic. For the first time in my life, I'm seeing things exactly as they are. This attitude of yours? The family helps family, right? Well, guess what? I'm family too. Or at least, I was supposed to be." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. When Mom spoke again, her voice was cold. "I'm very disappointed in you, Amber." I actually laughed at that. "Funny. I was just about to say the same thing to you." I ended the call and immediately blocked her number. Then, in quick succession, I blocked Dad's number, Bart's, and Sarah's. I opened every messaging app on my phone and blocked them there too. For good measure, I went through all my social media accounts and blocked them as well. It felt like cutting off a limb, but somehow, I was finally able to breathe. Weeks passed, then months. Through the family grapevine, mainly my cousin Rachel, who'd always been decent to me, I heard bits and pieces about what was happening. Bart had apparently come up with another brilliant business idea. Something about artisanal pet food delivery, or maybe it was organic food subscription boxes, Rachel wasn't quite sure. My parents were making the rounds, asking various relatives for startup money. Most of them had enough sense to refuse. Only Uncle Derek, notorious for charging interest rates that would make a loan shark blush, offered to help. Even my parents weren't desperate enough to take him up on that offer. The last thing I heard was that they were considering taking out another loan to fund Bart's latest venture. Rachel told me this over coffee one Saturday, watching me carefully for my reaction. "What do you think about that?" she asked. I stirred my latte, considering the question. 6 months ago, I would have been worried sick. 3 months ago, I would have been angry. Now? "Not my circus, not my monkeys," I said, and was surprised to find I meant it. Rachel grinned. "You seem different," she said. "Happier." I thought about my new apartment, decorated exactly how I wanted it. About my recent promotion at work, the one I'd celebrated with my team instead of my family. About the cooking classes I'd started taking on weekends, something I'd always wanted to do but never had time for when I was renovating the old apartment. I replied. I really am. Later that evening, I sat on my couch, in my apartment, with a glass of wine, thinking about everything that had happened. Mom's words echoed in my head one last time: family helps family. They were right about one thing: family should help family. But somewhere along the way, they'd forgotten that help should go both ways. That love should be unconditional. That family means supporting each other's growth, not enabling each other's failures. I took another sip of wine and smiled. I had better things to do than try to fix people who didn't want to be fixed. Much better things indeed.
I am Hillary, a 29-year-old. For me, who has led an ordinary life, my only pride was the presence of my best friend since school, Vanessa. During my job search, I was struggling to get job offers and felt down. Would you like to work at my dad's company? With that one phrase from Vanessa, my life changed significantly. Her father, Richard, is the chairman of a major beverage company. He hired me simply because I was her best friend. What made my life even more brilliant was meeting Michael, who was introduced to me by Vanessa. Michael was a kind person who listened seriously to even my trivial worries. Hillary, will you marry me? After dating for 6 months, I received a marriage proposal from Michael. I couldn't believe that such happiness could come to me, but it was real. We got married and started living together. The days I commuted with Michael in the morning filled me with excitement for our new life ahead. However, marrying an old man? You're just after his money, aren't you? I never thought that I would be addressed with such words by Michael. After 6 months of marriage, his attitude began to change. What's for dinner today? I began to notice the coldness in his voice. I made beef and potatoes. I thought you'd be pleased since it's your favorite dish. Michael's response was indifferent, and he began eating in silence as soon as he sat at the dinner table. Gradually, his attitude worsened further. He became increasingly cold towards me. Moreover, he began to say that he couldn't see me as a woman. He started coming home late at night more frequently, and my distrust only grew. Michael, you've been coming home late recently. Is everything okay? I'm just busy with work. It's none of your business. His cold words left me speechless. At that moment, my heart shattered. I could feel my love for Michael cooling gradually. I can't stand this anymore. It seemed that my murmur reached Michael's ears. Did you say something? I mustered my voice from the depths of my stomach. I can't stand this anymore. I want a divorce. The moment those words came out of my mouth, the room seemed to freeze. Michael's face twisted in surprise and anger. What? Are you sane? I'm sane. If anything, I wasn't sane before. Every day, I've been watching your mood and suppressing my feelings. I'm at my limit. My voice trembled. But I didn't look away and stared at Michael. For a moment, he seemed at a loss for words. Then, he suddenly smirked coldly. What will you have left if we divorce? You're currently living above the average with your husband's earnings. Are you dissatisfied with that situation? I'm not saying that at all. Just what? Men have to work hard outside. I couldn't find any words to return to Michael's. His words were cold and piercing. That's fine. Freedom is more important than money. Freedom? Don't make me laugh. Do you think you can live on your own? Michael's words brought a surge of anxiety. Indeed, I didn't know what awaited me in life from now on. But I couldn't go back. I can live. I've lived by my own strength until now, and I will from now on. You think you're some kind of tragic heroine? Michael looked down on me with pity. Are you really thinking of getting a divorce? You'll regret it. I won't regret it. Staying together would be more regrettable. At my words, Michael's expression changed. It seemed a mix of anger and surprise. Fine. If you want a divorce, I'll let you have it. But be prepared. Your life will become hell. Those words sent a chill down my spine. But I had already decided. That's fine. My current life is hell. Michael started to say something but left the room without uttering a word. The door closed violently. Left alone in the room, I sat huddled up. Tears flowed, but strangely, my heart felt lighter. I felt from the bottom of my heart that this was the right choice. Life ahead will surely be a series of difficulties, but I can live by my own will. That alone seemed to give me hope. It's okay. I can become strong. I reassured myself as I resolved to take a step toward a new life. A month after the divorce from Michael, I began a new life at my parents' house. Waking up in the morning, I opened my eyes in my old room. The morning sun, streaming through the window, seemed to bless my new life. After the divorce, I strangely felt at ease. Every day, I no longer had to guess someone's mood and felt the joy of living as myself. During this time, a new encounter came my way. One day, a colleague, George, spoke to me with concern. Hillary, I heard you recently got divorced. Are you okay? George's kind voice surprised me a bit. Since joining the company, we have been colleagues and comrades, always striving to outdo each other. Thank you, George. I've been going through a lot. Is that so? How about a change of pace and going out for a drink together? I nodded to his invitation. When we arrived at the pub, George listened quietly to my story. It had been really tough after the divorce. Living at my parents' house had stabilized my mood. George smiled kindly at my words. That's good to hear. I'm glad to see you happy, Hillary. His words warmed my heart. Thank you, George, for listening. I'm always here to talk. I felt my cheeks warm slightly at his words. After that, George and I started to interact more outside of work. One day, George confided his own worries to me. Actually, I've been having some troubles too. What? You, George? I was surprised, and he smiled shyly. Yes. Actually, my father is the chairman of the company. I couldn't hide my surprise. I had never imagined that George was the son of such a big company's chairman. But please don't tell anyone. I want to be recognized for my own abilities. I nodded at his serious expression. Of course, I won't tell anyone. But that must be a lot of pressure, right? Yes, it is. Sometimes I feel suffocated trying to meet my father's expectations. I understood George's suffering. I remembered the pressure I had felt during my marriage with Michael. George, I've felt similar feelings. So, I think I understand. George looked a bit surprised at my words, but soon smiled kindly. Thank you, Hillary. It really helps to have you around. From then on, we began to consult each other about our troubles. George became more than just a colleague. He became a support for my heart. Gradually, George and I grew closer. Every time I encountered his kindness and seriousness, I felt my feelings for him deepening. One day, George asked me out on a date. Hillary, would you like to go out with me this weekend? A date? I asked, surprised. George nodded shyly, saying, "Yes, a date." "What do you think?" My heart raced at his words. "Of course, I'll go." That weekend, we watched a movie and enjoyed a meal at a nice restaurant. The time I spent with him was truly happy, and my heart felt warm. "I really enjoyed today, Hillary." "Me too, George." "Thank you." On the way home, George gently took my hand. His warmth further warmed my heart. "Hillary, I love you." His words filled me with surprise and joy. "I love you too, George." As we confirmed our feelings for each other, we naturally kissed. At that moment, all my worries disappeared, and I was filled with happiness. After 6 months of dating, we continued to deepen our understanding of each other. George's kindness, his seriousness, and sharing his worries all made our bond stronger. Then, one day, George proposed to me. We got married without any problems and started a new life together. Being with George made me truly feel happy. Thank you, George. Let's keep working hard together. Yes, Hillary. We'll always be together. We held hands and began walking towards our future. Marriage with George brought me new hope and happiness. I also discussed my relationship with George with my best friend, Vanessa. It seems Vanessa also felt responsible for my divorce from Michael. "I'm sorry, I thought Michael would be okay." "Don't worry. Thanks to that, I met George." "Oh, that's good. How about we have dinner together sometime?" Vanessa and George agreed to my suggestion. When we spent time together, we found unexpected commonalities. Vanessa and George's fathers were important figures in their company. Therefore, they shared the children's conflicts. I get it. It's like pressure, right? Yeah. But I want to be recognized for who I am. I was happy that my best friend and my partner, now my husband, got along well. You know, they say love doesn't work out if those around you don't agree. I felt comfortable in a relationship where I could consult them about anything. 6 months into my marriage with George, a very happy piece of news arrived. "Hey, George. We've received a wedding invitation from Vanessa." "Really? That's wonderful. Let's go, Hillary." His kind smile made me nod a little nervously. On the day of the wedding, we stepped into the vibrant venue. A bit of nervousness surged as it had been a while since we all met due to our busy work schedules. "Hillary. Thank you for coming." Vanessa ran up to me happily. Behind her was a familiar face. "Hillary, long time no see." Vanessa's father, Richard, is the man who helped me with my job search. "Richard, it's been a while. Thank you for your help during my job search." "Don't mention it, it was all thanks to your own abilities, Hillary." And Richard's words were interrupted because someone else approached. "Hey, Richard. Long time no see." Surprisingly, it was George's father, who is the chairman of my company. As I explained earlier, Richard and George's father have been comrades since the old days. "Nice to meet you again, Hillary. Please take good care of my son." I responded with a smile, albeit feeling a bit overwhelmed, to George's father's words. From there, the three of us engaged in light conversation. We celebrated Vanessa's wedding and reminisced about old times. There was a happy atmosphere. However, that happiness did not last long. "Hey, if it isn't Hillary." A familiar voice made my body freeze. When I turned around, there stood Michael. Michael. Well, marrying an old man? You're just after his money, aren't you?" I was at a loss for words. It seemed Michael misunderstood that I had remarried Richard. What are you talking about? I am. That's fine. I'm producing results at work. You must regret your divorce, right? To think you'd marry an old man for his inheritance, you sure have changed your taste. Michael's provocative attitude angered me. However, this was a wedding venue. I couldn't raise my voice. Michael, that's all in the past. I am. Hey, old man. I work at a well-known beverage company. You know that, right? Michael started to take a confrontational stance towards Richard. Michael works at a fairly large company and seemed to want to flaunt his position. But then it happened. What? Who do you think this couple is? Tony exclaimed in a panic. Huh? Michael's expression froze. This man is the chairman of a major beverage company. The color drained from Michael's face. The beverage company I work for, mentioned by a guest from the groom's side, far surpasses the size of the company Michael works for. No way. Michael's voice trembled. That was when, as if to save me, George appeared from behind. Michael. George said quietly, yet forcefully. Hillary is my wife. Whatever her past, I will protect her now. George's words warmed my heart. Michael. Now Richard spoke up. Your company and ours have had dealings, haven't we? Unfortunately, as of today, those dealings will end. Huh? Wait, please. Michael was flustered. Just kidding. Was that not a business joke? Really, don't young people understand a business joke these days? Richard laughed as if teasing Michael. A joke, huh? That's a relief. The workplace you work at has been an important business partner I've worked with for many years. There's no way I could actually terminate a contract with such a workplace. Richard's words visibly relieved Michael. But Richard took a deep breath. I can't guarantee your future. Do you understand what that means? Excuse me? If you don't understand, let me tell you. You're fired. Such language towards the chairman of a major business partner, how appropriate is that? George was trembling with tension. I'm very sorry. Having an employee like you is a nuisance to us. I'll inform your company later. You're to be dismissed for misconduct. Dismissed for misconduct, that's too much. I just misunderstood. Misunderstanding, huh? Then, let's consider your dismissal my misunderstanding. Richard had already turned his back. Please wait, I'm truly sorry. Michael repeatedly apologized. Michael. Richard's low voice echoed through the area. A businessman sometimes has to be stubborn. Your dismissal is unavoidable. Because I am stubborn. Come on, Hillary, George. The ceremony is about to start. At Richard's words, we nodded. Leaving Michael behind, we headed to the ceremony hall. Watching Vanessa's happy figure, I savored my own happiness. Holding George's warm hand, I felt hopeful about the life ahead. The past with Michael was indeed painful. But it was overcoming that which made my present happiness possible. Thinking this, my heart strangely lightened. Hillary, are you okay? George asked with concern. Yes, I'm fine. In fact, I'm very happy. At my words, George smiled kindly. At that moment, I was certain. The past was just that, the past. From now on, I would build a new future with George. However, the day after Vanessa's wedding, an incident occurred. The day after Vanessa's wedding, I was enjoying a peaceful day off. George and I were planning to watch the continuation of last night's drama. As I relaxed in the living room, suddenly, there was a loud knock on the door. Who could it be? I wondered, tilting my head. George peeked out from the kitchen. I'll get it. As George was heading to the door, another fierce knock sounded. When he opened the door, an unexpected person was standing there. You. George's voice made me stand up in surprise. Michael was panting and his face was red as if he had been running. You guys really did it now. Michael yelled. George responded calmly. Michael, please calm down. What happened? Calm down? You've ruined my life. I stood behind George, staring at Michael. Michael, how did you find this place? I looked up your address from the guest list at the venue. I can't just sit back and accept what you've done to me. George said calmly. You've illegally obtained personal information. That's a criminal act. Michael ignored his words and yelled at me. You sabotaged me because you didn't like our divorce. I responded calmly. That's not true. We haven't done anything. Lies. You must have said something to the chairman. George continued to handle the situation calmly. Michael, your actions are the cause. We haven't done anything. However, Michael wasn't listening. Because of you, I'm being punished. Show some sincerity. I looked at Michael sympathetically. That might be difficult, but we don't know anything about it. Michael's anger intensified. I don't want your sympathy. And this George guy, does he really care about you, Hillary? George furrowed his brows. What do you mean? I saw you. You were walking with another woman. George answered calmly. That's a misunderstanding. I haven't been out with any woman other than Hillary. I agreed. George wouldn't do such a thing. I believe him. Michael grew even more furious. Are you still lying? After ruining my life, you dare to look happy. George said firmly. Michael, please leave. If you stay here any longer, we'll have to call the police. Michael flinched for a moment but quickly regained his anger. The police? Are you really going to go that far? I said kindly. Michael, please leave. Staying here won't change anything. Michael gritted his teeth and glared at us. You guys are a plague. Damn you. George had been silently listening to Michael's words, but gradually his expression hardened. Especially when he heard the words insulting me. I could see the flames of anger in George's eyes. That was when George suddenly took out his smartphone from his pocket. Michael looked puzzled by his action. Michael, I've reached my limit with your behavior. George's voice was cold and quiet. What's that smartphone for? Michael seemed a bit uneasy as he asked. George manipulated the screen and pressed the play button. Then, Michael's shouting voice from earlier started playing. This is. The color drained from Michael's face. The moment you appeared at the door, I had been recording this conversation. George explained calmly. I was surprised and looked at George. I hadn't thought he had anticipated things this far. Why would you do that? Michael's voice trembled. Because I anticipated your actions. And my prediction was correct. George answered plainly. Michael was at a loss for words, his mouth opening and closing. Michael, please listen. George continued with a serious expression. This recording contains evidence of threats against us. Misuse of personal information, and insults towards Hillary. So, what about it? Michael blustered, his voice clearly shaky. I intend to hand this recording over to the company chairman. George's words turned Michael's face pale. Stop it. If you do that, your position at the company will become precarious, right? In fact, it will be more than precarious. You'll have nowhere to go, George stated calmly. Michael was speechless, left standing there. Michael. George stepped forward. I might have forgiven you if it was just an insult to me. However, I will never forgive the insults towards Hillary. I felt warmth in my chest at George's words. George. I murmured involuntarily. Hillary is very important to me. Hurting her is something I cannot forgive more than hurting myself. There was strong determination in George's voice. Michael was completely devastated, his face pale. Please, delete that recording, Michael pleaded with a trembling voice. George seemed to think for a moment, but then appeared to make a decision. There is one condition. Anything, just tell me. Michael was desperate. First, you must sincerely apologize to Hillary. And, you must never come near us again. Michael hesitated for a moment, but then nodded. Okay. I'm sorry. Hillary, I was wrong. And I won't ever come near you two again. I promise. George listened to Michael's words and slowly nodded. Understood. Please keep your promise. If you break this promise, I will immediately call the police. Michael seemed startled by the mention of the police. Okay, understood. You'll delete the recording, right? At Michael's words, George smirked. I never promised to delete the recording. This evidence will be handed over to the chairman. Why are you doing this? That's not what you promised. Don't you understand what you've done? You were disrespectful to the chairman. It doesn't matter whether the chairman is my father or not. Such language is unacceptable towards a business partner. I didn't know that. Being unaware doesn't solve everything. As a professional, you should know that, shouldn't you? Michael had nothing to say in response to George's words. Furthermore, the theft of personal information, threats, and insults. As for your punishment, I cannot say anything. But please take the consequences seriously. Everything is the result of your own actions. The cause lies within you. At George's words, Michael collapsed to his knees. Please leave immediately. Otherwise, I will call the police. Michael, please go home. Staying here won't change anything. Michael gritted his teeth and glared at us. Damn it, it's all because of you. George said calmly. Michael, your life is for you to decide. Blaming us won't change anything. Michael started to say something but choked up. Then, suddenly, tears welled up in his eyes. Why are you guys the only ones happy? I said sympathetically. Michael, happiness is something you have to seize for yourself. Hating us won't change anything. Michael glared at us one last time and said, remember this. Before he left. When the door closed, George and I let out a deep sigh. Are you okay? George placed his hand on my shoulder. Yes, I'm okay. I'm really glad you're here, George. George smiled gently. We haven't done anything wrong. He will realize that eventually. I nodded. That's true. But I'm a bit worried about him. Me too. But, his life is for him to decide. We looked at each other and hugged quietly. Michael's visit was unexpected, but it seemed to strengthen our bond. Now, let's watch the continuation of last night's drama. That's right. I had completely forgotten. We held hands and headed to the living room. Overcoming this trial seemed to deepen our love. A few days after the wedding, Michael received an urgent summons from his boss at the company. Unable to suppress his anxiety, he headed to the conference room. When he opened the door, not only his boss but also the president and directors, including the chairman, awaited him with stern expressions. "What have you done?" Suddenly, the boss's roar echoed through the conference room. Michael tried to explain with a trembling voice, but his excuses were futile. Silence. "What were you thinking? Our transactions were about to be abruptly terminated because of you. You took our company for granted." The president interrogated him harshly. "I hear you were rude to the chairman of a business partner at the wedding venue?" Michael turned pale and tried desperately to explain. "No, that wasn't my intention. I don't want to hear excuses. Furthermore, you threatened and insulted the chairman's son and his wife. Plus, you stole personal information from the venue. These are serious criminal acts that affect our company's reputation. Your thoughtless actions almost caused substantial damage to our company." The chairman's voice filled with anger, and Michael was completely lost for words. Dismissed for misconduct. That's final. Upon hearing those words, Michael suddenly fell to his knees. "I'm very sorry. Please, give me another chance." He began to plead tearfully. However, the director's cold gazes did not change. Michael's demeanor was completely different from when he had been arrogant towards me. His life had changed drastically in just one day. Meanwhile, my life with George was filled with happiness. The day after the wedding, we were enjoying breakfast together. "George, what shall we do today?" The weather is nice, how about we go for a walk?" I nodded with a big smile at George's suggestion. We held hands and headed to a nearby park. In the park, children's laughter filled the air, and flowers bloomed beautifully. "George, look. That flower is beautiful." "Indeed. Your smile is just as beautiful." Blushing, I smiled at George's words. Then, we sat on a bench and enjoyed a leisurely time. "George, I'm really happy. I'm so glad to be with you." "Me too, Hillary. Every day becomes special because I'm with you." I rested my head on George's shoulder. There was an unspoken flow of love and trust between us. In the afternoon, we enjoyed cooking together. George handled the knife while I prepared the ingredients. Laughter never ceased in the kitchen. "George, that's not how you cut it. Like this." "Thank you, Hillary. I'm still learning how to cook." We laughed together. When dinner was ready, we sat down facing each other. "Let's eat. Looks delicious." As we enjoyed the meal, we discussed our future dreams and plans. The painful memories of the past had faded from my mind. Now, I was only looking at a happy future with George. In the evening, we sat on the sofa and enjoyed a movie. George held me gently, and I felt a profound sense of peace wrapped in his warmth. "George, thank you. Really, thank you. Hillary, thank you too. Being with you is my greatest happiness." With tears in my eyes, I smiled. Our love for each other would continue to grow. A blissful everyday life enveloped us both. There's no money left in this house, right? We don't need to deal with them anymore, do we? That's true. We don't need parents anymore. What? It means cutting ties with you. There's no point in trying to please a penniless mother-in-law. You try to mooch off us just because you're broke, and even though you don't have a penny, you say we should take care of you. It's a hassle, so I want to cut ties now. I understand your thoughts. So, the inheritance for you is that $30,000, and that's the severance money for cutting parent-child ties, right? Yeah, that's fine. After the husband passed away, the eldest son and his wife showed their true nature. They vented their frustration about the failed plans by confronting me with a declaration of estrangement. $30,000 is a lot of money. But they will regret having received that $30,000. 2 years after my husband passed away, I was sitting on a park bench eating bread. The peaceful moment was abruptly interrupted by a familiar voice. Isn't that Mother? Huh? It's true. Look. She's making a tired face, feeding pigeons in the park. No, I'm not feeding the pigeons. That's true. We took all the money, so of course, you'd become homeless. How's the homeless life? Anger had long passed, and I was already too dumbfounded to say anything. I sighed quietly and resumed my lunch. Mom, why are you ignoring me? Oh, we've cut ties, so maybe it's bad to call you Mom now. How about we call you Homeless Granny then? That's a good one. Homeless Granny. The eldest son and his wife, seeing that I remained silent, said whatever they wanted. After I finished eating my bread, I decided to tell them the truth. You keep saying homeless, homeless, but who are you talking about? You, homeless granny. I'm not homeless. I live over there now. What? I pointed to a building and explained the truth to the eldest son and his wife. Huh? Surprised by the truth, the son and his wife regretted it too late. I am Diane. I am a 60-year-old homemaker. My husband, Richard, is 67 years old and still working. About 20 years ago, he quit the company he was working for and founded an IT company. The company has been growing steadily, especially since it began handling a new sector about 10 years ago, leading to rapid growth. Now, it's quite a large scale. I, being just a homemaker, am clueless about it, but my husband talks about data science and big data. Due to his age, he is already retired as president, though he continues to work as the chairman. However, he thinks it's about time to step down from that role as well. We have a son, Sean. When my husband retired as president, Sean did not take over the company. Instead, he did not even help with my husband's company. I don't want to be seen as just living off my dad, so I'll make it on my own. After graduating from college, Sean said that and joined a company unrelated to IT, and left home. I had hoped Sean would take over my husband's company, so I was a bit disappointed then. However, as a doting parent, I felt a bit proud of him for choosing not to rely on his powerful parents, and I smiled when I heard about it. I won't force you, so do what you like. My husband seemed to feel the same, and while he looked a bit disappointed, he encouraged Sean. That was fine until Sean, after getting a job, rarely contacted us and only came home around Christmas. Lately, he just calls during Christmas and doesn't come home at all. Well, it's not unusual for men, and as long as he's doing well, that's fine. I try to tell myself that, but I still wish he would contact us more. One day, while I was still far from Christmas, Sean called. It's unusual for you to contact me outside of the year-end. I have something to report. I'll be coming home soon. Report what? I'm getting married, so it's about the greeting. Really? I was just happy that Sean had contacted me, and then I heard the unexpected news of his marriage, and I exclaimed loudly. My husband, who was leisurely watching TV, jerked and turned towards me. I returned his look with a beaming smile. He didn't know about Sean's marriage yet, and a question mark hovered over his head. Sean would bring his fiancée home in a month. Sean will be bringing his bride home soon. It's still 3 weeks away. 3 weeks will fly by. Since Sean called, I keep telling my husband that Sean will be coming home soon to report his marriage. My husband looks fed up, but I keep saying it unabashedly. I can't help but look forward to it. However, this report of marriage would bring me anxiety. A month later, Sean and his fiancée came home. I'm home. I'm back. Welcome. Come in. Dad is waiting in the living room. Excuse us. His fiancée, Mandy, looked young, more like an idol than a model with a cute face. She seemed nervous, glancing around at the entrance. As I led them to the living room where my husband was waiting, she kept looking around. Welcome. Have a seat. As they entered the living room, my husband seated Sean and his fiancée across from him. I sat next to my husband. The fiancée was still looking around. It was embarrassing to have our home looked at so closely, so I spoke up. Is there something you're curious about? No. It's just, it was different from what I imagined. Hey, don't say such embarrassing things right away. The fiancé's words and Sean's hasty follow-up were funny, and my husband and I looked at each other and laughed. Was the house more ordinary than you thought? No, that's not it. Don't worry about it. We aren't very materialistic. So even though my husband runs a big company, our house is average size, and we don't deck ourselves out in designer brands or eat extravagant meals every day. I see. I'm sorry for saying something strange all of a sudden. That's why I told you there's no need to be nervous, right? You see now that Dad isn't a very imposing person. It seems the eldest son couldn't help but laugh as well. The fiancé seemed to relax after seeing him laugh, and the conversation flowed smoothly from there. The fiancée might look young, but she's actually 27 years old and quite mature when you talk to her. I had been worried about my son not marrying even after turning 30, but I'm relieved he has found someone nice. 3 months later, my son got married. It was a happy occasion by itself, but it also had an unexpected side effect. Hello, Mom. Everything okay over there? Yes, no problems here. Dad and you are getting on in years, so take care of your health. Sean, every time you call, that's all you talk about. Since getting married, my son started calling once a month. Probably his wife found out he hadn't been contacting us at all before and told him to keep in touch regularly. My son, not used to calling us, seems unsure about what to talk about and always ends up asking about our health. I wish he would talk more about his work or his married life, but I always listen to him with a smile. During the first Christmas after my son's marriage, he and his wife visited us. I put extra effort into making homemade Christmas dishes to serve them. However, the daughter-in-law seemed a bit displeased. Mandy, is there something you can't eat? No, that's not it. I'll eat, thank you. She replied with a smile, but I didn't miss the brief cloud over her expression when she looked at the food, and she didn't eat much of it. Maybe there was something she couldn't eat? I worried that I had made the daughter-in-law uncomfortable, and kept glancing at her, making me the only one not talking much while my husband and the young couple were having a lively conversation. Finally, as it was time for my son and his wife to leave, my husband and the daughter-in-law were talking at the entrance, and my son whispered to me so that the others couldn't hear. Mom, homemade Christmas dishes are outdated. That's not true, right? There's no old or new in homemade dishes, right? That's an old-fashioned idea. The dishes you made prioritize preservation, right? Nowadays, Christmas dishes are eaten quickly and are made with more luxurious ingredients. I bet Mandy was disappointed, right? Is that so? I guess I didn't adapt to the tastes of young people today. I'm sorry. While times may change, I think there's no need to apologize for making Christmas dishes. However, overly concerned about the impression I made on my daughter-in-law, I ended up apologizing to my son in a whisper. After the small Christmas dish incident, the once-monthly calls became once every 2 months, then every 3 months. I felt down, thinking I had upset the daughter-in-law with the Christmas dishes. Seeing me like this, my husband reassured me kindly. There's no way she'd get upset over something like Christmas dishes, right? She must be busy with work. Or maybe trying to keep up monthly calls was too hard? It was a high hurdle, considering he hardly ever contacted us before. Even if it's once every 3 months, it's good that he contacts us at all. His words cheered me up a bit. However, I couldn't fully recover, and a nagging negative feeling remained in my heart. It seemed like this negative feeling in my heart had the power to attract bad things. Half a year later, my husband fell ill. This means I definitely can't work anymore. It's a good chance for me to retire. Lying in the hospital bed, my husband was happy he no longer had to work. But after 30 years of marriage, I could tell. He was frustrated that he had to retire suddenly due to illness, not by his own choice. His laughter, trying not to worry me, stung my heart. Naturally, I had informed my son that his father had collapsed. Huh? Dad collapsed? I'll come to see him sometime. My son's response over the phone was indifferent. My husband's condition worsened gradually, and yet my son and his wife never visited him in the hospital. Eventually, even the once every 3 months calls stopped, and after my husband collapsed, they no longer came home even for the Christmas. As time passed, 3 years later, my husband passed away. So, Dad finally did. Well, he was over 70 and had made his company successful, so he probably was satisfied with his life, right? Even when I told my son over the phone that his father had passed away, his reaction was indifferent. Although he showed up at the funeral, he didn't help out, and as soon as the formalities were over, he and his wife hurried back. Remembering them laughing as they got into the car, the sadness of my husband's absence was blown away, and I felt anger. However, this anger was fleeting, and soon I was overwhelmed by sadness. There were many things to take care of, like paperwork and cleaning up, but things didn't proceed as I hoped. About a month after my husband passed away, I finally started feeling a bit better. It seems that time heals most things. However, just as I was regaining my strength, a problem occurred that seemed to drain my energy. One morning, while I was doing laundry, the doorbell rang. "Mom, open up." When I checked the monitor on the intercom, my son and his wife were standing there. Despite it not being Christmas or any special occasion, I felt puzzled by their sudden visit but headed to the front door. "Dad's workroom is this way." "Wait a minute." As I opened the door, my son and his wife rushed into the house without greeting and headed straight for the room my husband had used for work. Left behind in the entrance for a moment, I hurried after them. "Where is it?" "I think it's in one of these drawers around here." The door to my husband's workroom was left open, and I could hear my son and his wife's conversation and the sound of them rummaging through drawers. "Hey, what are you doing?" They stopped opening drawers and turned to face me. I had an inkling of what was happening, but I was praying it wasn't true. "It's about time to talk about the inheritance, right? That's why we came to get what we're due." He was the president and chairman of a big company and didn't seem to spend much money, so there must be a lot of money, right? Apparently, my prayers went unanswered. After throwing a few words at me, my son and his wife started rummaging through the drawers again. Seeing them act like thieves, I lost the will to stop them. "Found it." "Isn't this it?" "Ooh. Did you find it? What's inside?" Breathing heavily, my son and his wife flipped through my husband's bank book. However, their expressions darkened when they saw the balance. "What's this? There's hardly any money in here." "Damn. I guess there wasn't as much money as I thought." It was clear that my son and his wife had come to the house with my husband's money in mind. However, I couldn't understand their conversation, and my thoughts eventually stopped, leaving me standing there, staring blankly. "Mom. You've had an easy life until now, but in the end, you ended up in a terrible situation, huh?" I snapped back to reality at the sound of my eldest son's voice. As my awareness sharpened, I saw my son and his wife looking at me with a malicious grin. Still unable to grasp the situation, I steeled myself for ridicule and asked my son, "What do you mean by a terrible situation? You don't have to play dumb." "We know. Your father-in-law fell ill around the time his company was absorbed by another, right? So, it means his company was operating at a loss and got taken under another company's wing, right? Huh? What are you guys talking about? A person holding a company on the verge of bankruptcy wouldn't have any money. But since he was the head of a big company, we thought there'd still be some money left, even if the company was struggling. My plan is ruined now. Yeah. Disappointing. Wait a minute. What are you talking about? Even after listening to my son and his wife, I couldn't understand a thing and, irritated, I raised my voice. However, my yelling didn't faze them, they continued to smirk like villains. The reason I didn't join Dad's company was because it seemed like a tough job dealing with such complicated matters. Why work up a sweat at Dad's company when I could inherit his vast fortune later? It would be smarter to just coast through an easy job, right? But to think it wouldn't go as planned. At first, I thought it'd be best to stay on your father-in-law's good side, so I was nice and made sure Sean kept in touch, even enduring that awful homemade Christmas dish. You ended that once you clearly understood that your father-in-law wasn't a strict person, right? You too, when you found out your father-in-law had let go of the company, you accepted it was just a downgrade from a sure-win life to a normal one, right? I might have given up, but you'd still expect to have about $100,000 saved up, right? Look at this bank book. There's only $30,000 in it. I guess it takes money to shut down a company? Well, we should be grateful for even this $30,000. As my son and his wife kept blabbering whatever they liked, my anger was about to explode. Yet, I clenched my teeth and pushed down the words rising in my throat. Mother, what's up? Your face is all red. Right, since there's no money left in this house, we don't need to deal with you anymore, right? That's right. I don't need a parent who ruins my plans. Huh? It means we're cutting ties with you. There's no money left in this house, right? There's no point in trying to please a penniless mother-in-law. It's a hassle to be asked for money or to take care of someone who doesn't have a single penny. We want to cut ties now. I understand your thoughts. So, your inheritance is that $30,000, and that's the severance money for cutting parent-child ties, right? I can keep the rest, right? Yeah, that's fine. We don't need this house anyway, and we'd be troubled if you tried to push debts on us. We're satisfied with just this $30,000. Like at my husband's funeral, my son and his wife left laughing. I didn't want to give them even $30,000 if I could help it. $30,000 is a lot of money. But they will regret receiving that $30,000 later. 2 years after my husband passed away. I had some errands in town and was wandering a bit. Moving around at over 65 years old is quite challenging. Tired, I decided to rest on a park bench. I sat down with a grunt and took out the bread I bought at the supermarket for a simple lunch. As I bit into my bread, pigeons gathered around. Watching the pigeons, I felt peaceful. Indeed, they are a symbol of peace. However, this peaceful atmosphere was quickly disrupted by a familiar voice. Isn't that you, Mother? Huh? It's true. Look. She's making a tired face, feeding pigeons in the park. No, I'm not feeding the pigeons. That's true. As usual, you don't spend much on appearances, huh? Oh, maybe you have no money to spend. We took all the money, so of course, you'd become homeless. How's the homeless life? As usual, my son and his wife aren't listening to me at all. Anger has long passed, and I'm already too dumbfounded to say anything. I sigh quietly and resume my lunch. Mom, why are you ignoring me? We've cut ties, so maybe it's bad to call your mom now. How about we call you Homeless Granny then? That's a good one. Homeless Granny. My son and his wife, taking advantage of my silence, say whatever they want and laugh. I've finished my bread, so it's about time to tell them the truth. You too, you've been saying homeless, homeless, but who are you talking about? You, Homeless Granny. I'm not homeless. I live over there now. What? I point to a building. My son and his wife slowly turn their gaze in the direction I'm pointing. What I pointed at appears small and distant, but is a prestigious high-rise condo. At first, I thought a luxury high-rise condo was too much, but living there, it turns out to be quite convenient. That high-rise condo has rooms adapted for the elderly, and I live there. Plus, care staff are on site 24/7, so it's reassuring in case something happens. Huh? Don't brag. A homeless granny like you couldn't possibly afford to live there, right? Well, yes. That's because my husband left that high-rise condo to me. What do you mean? My husband owned 5 high-rise condos. I started living in one of them. I own the others now, so I have rental income. That's why I'm not struggling with living expenses. If you're going to lie, at least make it a believable one. It's true. I'll show you proof. I shouldn't really show these, so just a little, okay? I take out documents related to the ownership and rental contracts of the high-rise condo from my bag and show them to my son and his wife, who were so surprised that their jaws nearly dropped. My errand today was related to this high-rise condo, and I happened to have the documents with me. They seemed doubtful, but after seeing these documents, they finally understood I was telling the truth. Where would Dad get that kind of money? You guys thought Dad's company was absorbed due to debts, but it was actually a proper sale. The high-rise condos were an investment purchase with the money from that sale. That's why there was only $30,000 in savings. I think he also had a purpose to leave an inheritance in forms other than money, but maybe he wanted to do something like work because he had to retire suddenly due to his illness, right? When my eldest son and his wife learned the truth that I actually did have a high-rise condo, they were dumbfounded. However, saying I owned 5 buildings might indeed be a bit of an exaggeration, as my son suggested it could be a lie. Constructing a single high-rise condo costs tens of millions. For 5, you'd need hundreds of millions. It's not feasible to get such an amount from selling a company, and even large corporations can't easily build 5 high-rise condos. Therefore, I am not the full owner of one building, but rather I own parts of it. When I said 5 buildings, I meant that I own units in 5 buildings, specifically 6 units. I simplified it to 5 buildings because explaining it was too cumbersome. My son and his wife mistakenly thought I owned entire buildings, but it's too much trouble to correct them, so I'll leave it as it is. Even though I exaggerated about owning 5 buildings, owning 6 units is still significant. Each unit in the high-rise condos my husband purchased costs over $500,000, which means the 6 units are worth more than $3 million in total. My husband invested most of the money he got from selling his company into these high-rise condos. It must have been enjoyable for him to make such a big purchase with the money he earned over his lifetime. If there are so many, couldn't you share one with us? Yeah, it must be hard for Mom to manage them all by herself. We can help. Upon realizing I was the owner of the high-rise condos, my son and his wife became cautious in their choice of words and spoke awkwardly. Their attitude changed completely. Of course, I cannot trust such people. There's no need for strangers we've cut ties with to worry. But no, wait. Even if we've cut ties, we are still family. That means, after Mom is gone, the high-rise condos automatically become mine, right? Right. Yes. There's no need to beg this old lady here. My son and his wife started to smirk again like villains. But I have no intention of leaving such an important inheritance from my husband to such undeserving people. Unfortunately, I won't be passing them on to you. Are you planning to write in the will that you don't want me to inherit? That's pointless. I know that a child's right to inherit can't easily be nullified. Yes. That's why I plan to dispose of the property in the end. What? I intend to transfer the high-rise condos to people my husband knew. What? I live in one of the 6 units of the high-rise condo, but the other 5 units are inhabited by my husband's acquaintances. They are all married, and each one runs their own business, so I don't think they'll move out at least until I join my husband. Therefore, I'm not worried about vacancies. These people supported me and were helped by my husband during his lifetime, so I intend to transfer the high-rise condos to them when I pass away. It's much better than leaving them to my son and his wife. Additionally, the money that's slowly accumulating from the rent of the high-rise condos, I plan to donate to my husband's cherished company. It won't be a large amount, but since I've already given $30,000 to my son and his wife, I don't want to give them a single penny more. Well, when I leave, I'll make sure nothing is left behind. That's terrible. My son, realizing I intend to leave nothing behind, seemed deflated and sat down on the ground. Although $30,000 is a significant amount, it's not something my son couldn't earn himself. Therefore, if he forsakes the high-rise condos for $30,000, regret is natural. Discussing what will happen after I'm gone while I'm still alive isn't pleasant. However, this time, I enjoyed seeing my son and his wife panic. Well, I still have things to do, so I'm leaving. Goodbye, estranged strangers. I left the park feeling light-footed after my break. My son, apparently frustrated at missing out on the high-rise condo, bought a small condominium in a fit of pique. However, due to his lack of knowledge and haste, he's struggling with vacancies, and the condominium management is running at a loss. After investing his savings and taking loans to buy the condominium, he can't keep it indefinitely and will have to let it go eventually. If he does, he'll be left with hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt. Moreover, if he tries to sell the condominium and can't find a buyer, it might be even more tragic. If he can't find a buyer, he might have to demolish the building and sell just the land. The thought of adding demolition costs to the debt is terrifying. I live comfortably in a high-rise condo designed for the elderly. The people living in my high-rise condo, who were helped by my husband, take good care of me. Living alone as an elderly person is supposed to be lonely, but I don't feel that at all. Since the weather looks nice today, I think I'll go to the park again. I want you to marry me, Sean said to me with a determined look. We were at a fancier restaurant than usual. And although I had suspected something like this might happen, the moment of the proposal, one every girl dreams of, made my heart and knees tremble. He skipped all the preliminaries and went straight to proposing. It must have been quite a high for Sean too. Thinking about that, I began to calm down, and I could feel my trembling subside. I have something I really want to do right now. It's my dream, my goal. Can I continue with it even after we're married? I asked. Sean nodded and smiled. Of course. I am Rebecca. I have a dream. I want to make my passion my life's work. And I'm taking steps towards making it a reality right now. I've always been good with my hands, enjoying detailed work and having a strong interest in crafting. I've made plastic models and even carved woodblock prints and Buddha statues with chisels. I have the patience needed for crafting. As I mastered various tools and expanded the types of things I could create, I started to wonder what it was that I truly wanted to create. Instead of dabbling in everything, I felt a desire to focus and fully utilize my abilities. During this time of searching, when I was a freshman in high school, my father suggested I attend a jewelry making class. My father runs an import company and knew a handmade jewelry designer through work. The recommended class was run by her, and she also taught there. As a girl, I had an interest in jewelry. But I had only ever thought of it as something to buy, not to make. The concept of handmade jewelry opened up a new path for me. You come highly recommended by your father. I hear you're very skillful with your hands. "We welcome such talents," said Gina, the teacher, who is reputed to be a charismatic figure in the jewelry world. Her delicate, precise, yet bold designs are unique and have captivated many women. On the first day, after learning about the tools needed for handmade jewelry, such as pliers, nippers, cutters, and tweezers, I got to try them out. I was already familiar with these tools, but the ways they were used in jewelry making were somewhat unique and fascinating. "You have a good touch. It's clear you're used to these tools. You'll be able to move up quickly," the teacher praised me. I was pleased, although I felt a bit puzzled because it didn't seem like such a big deal to me. "If you're willing, I'll teach you everything I know. What do you think? Want to give it a try?" "Yes, please. I learned something new today. I want to know more." I had a vague sense, but I was aware that jewelry making was what I had been looking for, what I should be doing and focusing on. It was a strange feeling, as if I had finally found what I had always been searching for. And realizing this is it during my first experience was exhilarating. Despite it being our first meeting, I instinctively knew that Gina was the person who would lead me to the pinnacle of this world. To describe this feeling as merely strange seemed far too simple. I had stuck my foot in the door out of a desire to learn something new. But I quickly became enthralled with jewelry making. Once my engine started, I was hooked, and attending classes became incredibly enjoyable. As I learned from Gina and began to research on my own, I eventually came to understand the allure of jewelry and wanted to create something that would maximize its potential. The joy of having found something I truly wanted to engage in enveloped me. While I continued to create, my interest also turned toward accessory design, prompting me to enroll in the design course led by Gina. I realized anew that creation begins from nothing, and design is that critical first step. Design demands more than manual dexterity, it requires strong drawing skills, a sense of aesthetics, and creativity, forces I had not fully utilized until now. "Rebecca, you have a knack for this. Combining craftsmanship with design talent is rare." I was genuinely happy to hear her words because by that time, I was already convinced that this was my true calling. There are people in the world who are incompatible with oneself. And during the design course, I encountered such a person. Her name is Mandy. We were the same age, but for some reason, she took an unexplained dislike to me. Just because the teacher pays a bit more attention to you, don't get all cocky. You don't have any real talent. You're such an eyesore. Mandy seemed she didn't like that Gina had highly rated me. Mandy was enrolled in the designer course, aiming to become a designer herself. But she seemed jealous and competitive, because I had appeared later and demonstrated greater ability. If she had time to worry about others, she should focus on improving herself. I couldn't understand her attitude of treating me as an enemy without making any effort herself. And it was quite a nuisance. Although meeting Mandy was distressing, I never thought about quitting the class. For me, thinking about and creating jewelry had become incredibly important, almost inseparable from my life. The teachings I received from Gina were a significant stimulus and absolutely crucial. And I could not consider distancing myself from these benefits. Despite the problem of Mandy, the time I spent fully learning about my passion flew by quickly. As the time to graduate from high school drew near, I began to contemplate my future path. I thought about what I was seriously committed to, and the things I needed to realize the world as I envisioned it. I found myself wanting to delve deeper into the study of design and the materials of jewelry and precious metals. I believed that skill is supported by knowledge, and knowledge in turn supports skill. This was the philosophy I held. Knowledge does not betray you. Now is the time to expand your capacity. Gina supported my thoughts. I set my sights on a university with an art department and dedicated myself to studying for the entrance exams, but Mandy mocked me. I'll move straight into a designer career after graduating high school. I don't have time for detours. You might as well get lost in a detour or a maze. Mandy planned to join Gina's design office immediately after graduation. If taken at face value, her plan might seem commendable. But I could clearly see Mandy's underlying motives and true feelings. She found studying bothersome. She didn't want to spend 4 more years studying. If she had the time, she wanted to start working in the field immediately to enhance her skills. But had Mandy really made an effort to improve herself during the nearly 3 years we had been together? I knew her thinking all too well. Mandy did not excel at learning. She wanted to be the best, but did not show the effort required for it. Mandy, you always act so cool. Do you want to go to college to make a name for yourself? Don't you want to get into design right away? Knowledge never betrays you. I thought about my future and decided I need to gain more knowledge now, I replied. As Mandy laughed and waved her hands dismissively while walking away. A surge of confidence, or rather, conceit, seemed to emanate from her. Suddenly, I remembered Gina's words about her. Mandy would grow so much more if she embraced humility and effort. Having wanted to gain specialized knowledge about design and precious materials, my wish came true when I enrolled in the art department at a comprehensive university. I couldn't wait to spend the next 4 years immersed in learning about design. A jewelry designer needs knowledge of precious metals, drafting skills, and a sense of design. For custom orders, capturing the client's image and sketching it out, as well as insight and the ability to propose designs, are essential. The entire process requires meticulousness to achieve a high degree of completion. I was determined to master these during my 4 years at university and stand on the starting line as a designer. My college life, eagerly anticipated, turned out to be as fruitful as I had hoped. Not only because of the learning but also because I made new friends. There were students from various faculties at my university, and interaction was lively. While most students met through club activities, my case was a bit different. I've always been interested in cooking, and while I'm not bragging, I was confident in my ability to cook reasonably well. Wanting to try a part-time job now that I was in college, I saw a flyer for a cooking assistant at the university cafeteria and thought it was perfect for me. Luckily, my required courses were scheduled in the morning 3 times a week. But the rest were in the afternoon, meaning I had mornings free, which was ideal for working at the cafeteria before my afternoon classes. It was as if the job had been tailor-made for me. Of course, I applied immediately and was hired. At first, I was assigned simple tasks, but as my skills became known, I was entrusted with more important tasks. 2 months later, although it was just basic stew, I was entrusted with the main cooking task. It might have been due to a staff shortage, but it ignited my creative soul. And I created a stew with my own unique twist. Ted and Alyssa were the first customers for my stew. This stew is incredibly good. It's not just your average cafeteria level. Encouraged by the praise I overheard, I couldn't help but jump out in front of them, surprised to learn that a fellow student had made the stew. This was the beginning of our connection, and the starting point of our friendship among the 3 of us. It was perhaps a somewhat unusual pattern. We were from different faculties with different future goals. But perhaps it was a shared underlying spirit that fit together like puzzle pieces, forming an indispensable relationship. I absorbed deeper knowledge in lectures and obtained several qualifications said to be advantageous for becoming a jewelry designer. Among them, passing the Level 1 Jewelry Coordinator certification recognized by the American Jewelry Association boosted my confidence. The best part of my campus life was meeting Ted and Alyssa, who would become lifelong friends. I continued my cafeteria job until graduation, and I can't count how many fans of my cooking I made in those 4 years. Before graduation, the operator allowed me to plan a final menu, and my cooking fans lined up daily, achieving a great success. It was a truly rewarding 4 years of university. After graduating, I was set to join Gina's design office, excited to finally be able to work professionally in design. However, the thought of encountering Mandy there dampened my spirits. So I resolved to interact with her as little as possible. "I've been waiting for you. I'm looking forward to seeing how much you've improved," Gina said, placing her hands on my shoulders. I was assigned to the first design department, where high-end jewelry is designed. And there, unexpectedly, I had an undesired reunion with Mandy. "Why are you in the first department?" "I'm only in the third. As usual, you're getting special treatment. Besides the first design department, there are the second department, which designs high-class accessories, and the third department, which designs general mass-produced types." Although Mandy and I were in different departments, we were in the same space. I could feel piercing stares on my back while working, and I didn't need to look to know whose they were. There were unfounded bad rumors about me, and I was hindered from obtaining necessary supplies, often causing work disruptions. It was easy to identify the source, but that was of little consolation. On the other hand, my work was going smoothly, and my designs were gaining recognition within the company. I created prototypes myself, and their quality surprised everyone. Each time my evaluation improved, it seemed to irritate Mandy even more, which was a real nuisance. I wished she would direct that energy towards her work. Before I knew it, 3 years had flown by. They say time passes quickly as you grow older. But perhaps it feels even quicker because of the fulfillment of daily life. I was riding the wave of work, with new ideas constantly coming to mind. Recently, personal changes were also occurring. "Rebecca, I've discovered a stylish cafe. Would you like to go?" The source of the change. Sean, a salesperson from a supplier who had been assigned to our company half a year ago, was inviting me out again today. He had started by inviting me to cafe, meals, and movies. And although I was overwhelmed by his approaches, I eventually agreed to go out with him. And before I knew it, we had started something akin to dating. I had never been particularly interested in men, focusing solely on design. But I was drawn to Sean's good conversational skills, gentle manners, and humor. Although I was puzzled by my own feelings, spending time with him felt fulfilling. When Sean unusually invited me to a high-end restaurant, I sensed something was up. As we moved to coffee time after the meal, at the perfect moment, he presented a small box and said, "I want you to marry me." As expected, I thought, but I couldn't remain completely calm. In fact, my knees were trembling. It was the moment of proposal every girl dreams of, and my heart and knees shook. He skipped all the preliminaries and went straight to proposing. Sean must have been quite excited too. Thinking about that, I started to calm down, and I could feel my trembling subside. "I think I want to marry you too, Sean." But there's something I really want to do right now. It's my dream, my goal. Can I continue it even after we're married? I understand, it's about design, right? I have no intention of taking that away from you. Of course, that's fine. I'll support you. The moment Sean answered, a fanfare of marriage confirmation rang in my head. The life milestone of marriage seemed to give me a significant boost. Activated by this, more design ideas surged forth, and I created works that even surprised Gina. I'd like to say it was smooth sailing, but Mandy's hostility towards me doubled. "You're getting married, you uppity woman." I don't know the details because I'm not interested, but it seems Mandy doesn't have a lover. That's probably why she's throwing a hysterical fit out of frustration. It's only going well for you now. You'll fall into hell later. No, I'll make sure of it. To me, Mandy's threatening words sounded like the pitiful flailing of a woman I should just ignore. Sean and I, having chosen an auspicious day, finally started our married life. Of course, it's my first marriage, so I have no one to compare him to. But Sean is an outstanding husband. Just having him by my side fills my heart. This feeling is new to me, and I am genuinely happy and feel blessed. As he promised before our marriage, he shows understanding towards my work, repeatedly offering support and praise. Jewelry and accessories lead people to happiness. The happiness I feel in creating them reflects in my work, producing superior pieces. I wonder how long the honeymoon phase of our newlywed period will last. It varies from person to person, and there's no set moment it ends. But I suspect it lasts at least a year, no matter how brief. 10 months into marriage. The honeymoon period I thought would last forever with Sean gradually began to cloud over. Starting, I think, with his increasingly late returns home. He would blame it on work getting busier or overtime. And his late returns became the norm every working day, leading to more overnights and a growing sense of doubt and unease. When he started going out even on days off, claiming he had to work, I once asked him, "Your job isn't supposed to be so busy that you need to work on weekends, right?" From my mistrust, my tone might have turned a bit sharp. Then he would sarcastically retort, "That's rude, I've gotten busier." Well, not as busy as you. While I often return home late from work myself, Sean is still not back yet. When I enter our dark home, I feel a cold draft hit me. When I noticed the smell of perfume on Sean's suit, I was stunned. Searching his pockets, I found a pair of women's earrings that weren't mine. When I found them, I couldn't stand any longer and sat down on the floor. Even while sensing another woman's presence, I was too scared to confront Sean directly. The instability in my personal life and the turmoil in my heart started affecting my work, causing a slump. "What's wrong? You seem off. This is the time to really push through. Hang in there." I felt sorry toward Gina, who was concerned for me, and tears almost came. Yes, this is a crucial time. For the sake of realizing my dreams, I cannot afford to look down. That night, Sean came home on time unusually, and I had a report for him. "I've decided to quit my job from now on." Before I could finish, Sean raised his voice. "What? You plan to be unemployed? You're joking, right? What will happen if we lose your income?" "No, not unemployed." I tried to continue my report, but Sean interrupted me with a displeased look. "After all this time married, we still don't have kids. You're useless as a wife already, and now you plan to leech off me with no income? Could it be that he's thought of me as a useless wife all this time? That's outrageous." Frustrated, I retorted. Leeching? Not having a baby is something bestowed, it's not just my fault. You're always home late, we hardly have any time together. But Sean was no longer listening. He dismissively said, "Ah, enough. You're worthless unemployed. It's about time to end being useless." What do you mean by end? Wait, what are you saying? Just what I said. Sign this. Confused, I looked at what Sean handed me. It was a divorce form. As I stared speechlessly at the paper, Sean said with a laugh, "My girlfriend is pregnant. I'm going to be a dad. She's a better woman than you. Earns less than you did, but still more than you, now that you're unemployed. So, you were cheating. And you got her pregnant. That's right, so goodbye. I'll let you keep all the property, so don't even think about asking for compensation." Then, as if he had packed in advance, Sean grabbed 2 bags and left the house. I couldn't keep up with the turn of events and just sat there, staring at the divorce papers on the table. How long had it been? I lost track of time. My phone rang, snapping me back to reality. An unknown number. Normally, I would ignore it, but in my disoriented state, I answered unconsciously. Finally picked up, "Huh? You can't ignore me." It was Mandy. I was so stunned, the shock didn't fully register. "So, you're at rock bottom, huh? Makes sense, since your husband left you." "How do you know that?" Why Mandy knew about my situation was beyond me, as my mind couldn't catch up. Mockingly, Mandy continued, "Sean is with me now. He just left you. That's why I told you not to get cocky. Why is Sean with you? Don't you get it? Sean is mine now. You've been dumped. Hurry up and file those divorce papers. We want to get married soon, for the baby's sake." Mandy laughed as she said her piece and hung up. Even with my slow processing, I realized that Sean's other woman was Mandy. With my phone still to my ear, how much time had passed. Slowly, I clawed my way out of the mire of shock, and anger began to rise within me. Divorce? Fine. I couldn't stay married to such a man. I would never forget this. I would make him painfully aware of his own foolishness and guilt. That time would surely come. I had a premonition about it. 2.5 years later, here I am, at the grand opening of a high-end jewelry shop in a new large shopping mall. This is the 3rd store, and the first 2 have gained high popularity among young women, with high expectations for the new outlet. The store was bustling with customers right after opening. I enjoy visiting shops as part of my routine, observing what kind of pieces interest customers and trends in what sells. I also listen to conversations between customers to gather information, which often provides hints for my designs. As I was walking through the store, eyes and ears open, I was suddenly approached. It was Sean, my ex-husband. "Rebecca, what are you doing in a place like this? This is no place for you. Just go home." Seeing his face and hearing his voice for the first time since the day he handed me the divorce papers, the frustration of that day resurfaced. "Why are you even here? This place doesn't suit you. I'm looking for a present for Mandy. I give her gifts for every anniversary. We're doing great." "Oh, really? And you say I don't belong here? What do you mean? Come on, you gave up on being a designer because you had no talent and quit your job, right? Yet here you are, hanging around out of regret? Pathetic." I let out a big sigh and began to correct his misunderstanding. You know, this is my store? Sean looked momentarily stunned, but soon his expression turned to one of pity. You're delusional. If you think you can make up such lies, it's no laughing matter. It sounds like an illness. Just then, an employee approached me. President, about the display matter. Oh, I'm sorry, were you busy? No, it's okay. We'll talk later. After apologizing to the employee and facing Sean again, he was shaking with astonishment. You're the president. So, this really is your place? The day Sean talked about me leaving the company and initiated the divorce. He didn't let me explain that I was leaving to start my own design studio. With Gina's encouragement, I decided to pursue my dream of independence. As I planned this, not only designing, but also selling the products myself became part of the goal. The opportunity came from my father, who runs an import business, and offered to share his know-how on product sourcing and sales. While my own accessories alone wouldn't have been enough to open a store. Combining them with a variety of excellent products sourced both domestically and internationally, we could make it work. Gina was also keen to help, and so the plan kicked off. Furthermore, the arrival of two powerful allies made the founding of my company possible. Those allies were Ted and Alyssa, my close friends since university. Ted, a lawyer specializing in corporate law since graduating from law school, advised on company setup and intellectual property rights. Alyssa, with a background in business administration and rich in management knowledge, drew on her experience to offer operational advice. With their robust support, the company had a smooth start. Additionally, both my father and Gina provided financial support. Especially Gina, who also has a side as an investor. And she opened her class with the intention of leading capable individuals to independence. I was fortunate to meet her standards. I think I was lucky. The first store gained a reputation for the quality of its accessories and, being in a good location, attracted many customers. Social media spread helped too, stabilizing and increasing sales. My designs appealed to many female customers, especially younger ones. And the items sourced internationally were popular across all ages. Before I knew it, the company's retained earnings had grown so much that, after several capital increases, our total assets had reached $10 million. So, I'm doing well as a designer. Maybe my luck turned around after we split up? Realizing the truth, Sean's attitude changed, and he pressed me. $10 million in assets? When did? Wait, that means I'm entitled to a part of that. We need to divide your wealth fairly. Sean had previously said there would be no compensation or division of assets. But when I pressed him on this, he pathetically backtracked. That doesn't count. I didn't know you were going to be wealthy. What is he talking about now? The situation was so absurd that my astonishment quickly gave way to laughter welling up inside me. You don't understand, do you? Asset division is about dividing wealth acquired together when you divorce. Why should I share the wealth I built on my own after our divorce? When I asked this, Sean struggled to respond. That's because, it's thanks to our marriage that your luck improved. That's why. He was twisting my words to suit himself. The wealth was created through my design skills. Even if it went to court, do you think you'd have a chance? I don't know about that. Sean still thought he could extract something from me. I needed to cool him down. Let me tell you something decisive then. The statute of limitations for claiming a division of assets is 2 years after divorce. That period has long expired. Even if it hadn't, your foolish demands would not have been recognized. Damn it. Frustrated, Sean was now on the defensive. Well then, I'll also be claiming compensation from you and Mandy. Make sure you pay up. Compensation now? That's not what we agreed on. Besides, who asks for compensation so late? He had no grounds to stand on, having reneged on his own words. Sean was angry but legally. The statute of limitations for filing for compensation was 3 years, so I was safe. Explaining this, Sean pleaded in desperation. Don't do this. Please, I don't have that kind of money. Oh, really? But you were here to buy a gift for Mandy today, weren't you? You must be getting squeezed by her, she's so demanding. Caught off guard, Sean stumbled over his words. I added. I've heard Mandy makes all her men pay. Her relationships are a mess. Gina, too, had been troubled by Mandy's conduct, once remarking. This isn't a school, so I can't give life guidance, but I can't just ignore it either, while grimacing. Suddenly, I remembered something and said, You blamed me for not getting pregnant as a reason for our divorce. But wasn't it you who was the issue? What are you suddenly talking about? What do you mean? Well, it turns out I'm quite fertile. My daughter is almost 2 years old now. Betrayed by Sean and having become wary of men. It was Ted who had supported me both personally and professionally. I've loved you since college. You had me with your cafeteria stew. Believing in Ted, I entered a relationship with him. Soon after, I became pregnant with his child and we married. With Mandy's hectic love life, you think she's pregnant with your child? Convenient timing. If you were the cause of the infertility, is her child really yours? Only God knows. It's my child, don't joke about that. Defeated in argument, Sean walked away as if sleepwalking. Later, I learned from reports that after confronting Mandy, Sean had a breakdown when he found out my suspicions were true. They broke up not just because of their relationship issues. After making a scene at Gina's office, where Mandy worked, which even involved the police, Gina, fed up with Mandy's behavior, fired her. Furthermore, Gina complained to Sean's company, leading to his dismissal. Now jobless, both were crushed under the weight of the compensation I demanded. Unescapable, thanks to the sharp lawyer Ted. How they would manage their finances was no concern of mine, they'd probably drown in debt. While Ted and Alyssa helped manage the business, I devoted myself to designing. I wanted to create things that would make women happy, adding a bit of sparkle to their lives. As I was planning the 4th store and reviewing properties, my phone rang. Good work today. Looks like I can come home early. Let's have dinner together. What's on the menu? Stew, your favorite. Great. Your stew has always been the best since our cafeteria days. I'm rushing home. Now, I'm truly happy and fulfilled. When my daughter gets a little older, I'll teach her my stew recipe. Too bad. I'll give you as much compensation as you want, you poor thing. Candace here is the CEO. My name is Candace. I've been married to my husband Scott for 2 years. We both work full-time and are so busy that we only really get to talk on weekends. But our marriage is strong and we go on an overseas trip together once a year. When we got married, we decided to build a new house, and we went all out and built a mansion. I am satisfied with our life now. I have a best friend from high school named Katie, and we sometimes go out for lunch together. Katie has high standards for men and, although she is not married yet, she has a strong desire to marry. She's adamant about finding a high-earning partner and has been on the lookout for one for quite some time. Hey, can I come over to your house next time? Today, I am having lunch with my best friend Katie for the first time in a while. We've both been busy and couldn't meet often, just occasionally catching up over phone or email, but today we managed to find time. Katie and I have been best friends since high school, and we've consulted each other on various matters. Both the fun and tough times have now become good memories. I got married to my current husband 2 years ago, and my job has gotten busier, reducing the time I can spend with Katie. My husband generally has weekends off, but due to the nature of his sales job, working on weekends isn't rare depending on client schedules. With my husband busy with work, I was left alone wondering how to spend my free time, which led me to this point after receiving a message from Katie. Sure, we're close by from here. Why don't we have some coffee at my place after this? Really? I'd love to go. After getting married, Scott and I built a house. But I mostly met Katie outside, so inviting her over was a first. After finishing our lunch, we headed to my home. As soon as Katie arrived, she was amazed. Wow! It's such a huge mansion. This is incredible. We built our house without compromising since it was a once-in-a-lifetime purchase. It's bigger than most family homes and still new. So the interior is clean, and Katie seemed to really like it. We went all out because it's a house on its own. It's spacious and beautiful, really incredible. Must have cost a fortune, huh? It's a big purchase, but it's our home to live in. It cost about $1 million. Hearing this, Katie's eyes widened in surprise. $1 million. Is your husband's salary that high? Katie has always had high standards for men, especially regarding income, which was evident from her question. My husband's salary? Well, I'd say it's pretty high for his age. I tried to answer vaguely to avoid any specifics. I see. I had no idea back then, but that mysterious response had started something happening. Unaware, I continued to the living room to prepare coffee. Hey, since I'm here, can I stay until tonight to meet your husband? Katie asked with a smile, holding a cup. There was no reason to refuse, so I happily agreed. Yay! Oh, where's the bathroom? Ah, it's this way. I guided Katie to the restroom and waited for her in the living room. In the meantime, I emailed my husband to let him know Katie was visiting, and we would be having dinner together. After a while, Katie returned holding a bag, which upon closer inspection, turned out to be my bag. That's actually my bag. Oh, I got lost after coming out of the bathroom and ended up touring the house. Then I found this. Hey, this brand is super expensive, isn't it? Can I borrow it for a while? There wasn't much distance from the bathroom to the living room, so she must have wanted to look around the house. However, the bag she was holding should have been in my bedroom. Realizing she had entered my bedroom without permission was uncomfortable. But it didn't seem worth making a fuss over, so I reluctantly agreed to lend her the bag. Okay, but you have to give it back. It's a gift from my husband. Of course. I know what you mean. Later, while I was checking the bedroom during a trip to the bathroom, I noticed that although nothing was visibly disturbed, the closet had been opened, and bags and shoes were slightly scattered. I decided to mention it to Katie. Hey Katie, you went into the bedroom, right? It looks like you went into the closet too, but please don't do that. When I looked Katie in the eye and spoke, her eyebrows twitched for a moment. Yeah, you're right, sorry. I won't do it again. Thanks, I appreciate it. As we were talking, my husband came home. I had informed him earlier about Katie's visit, and he, being considerate, had brought home a cake. I'm home. Welcome back. Oh, thanks for the cake. This is my friend Katie. I mentioned her in the email. Would you like to join us for dinner tonight? Nice to meet you, Katie. Candace always speaks highly of you. Of course, that sounds great. Nice to meet you. I couldn't attend your wedding due to illness, but I'm glad to meet you now. Katie hadn't been able to attend our wedding due to falling ill. So this was the first time she met my husband. After dinner, we had the cake Scott bought with tea. Katie's friendly nature meant she quickly got along with my husband. And the evening ended pleasantly. About a month later, I started noticing a change in my husband's behavior. He would quickly avert his eyes while talking to me, and he spent more time on his smartphone, even taking it with him to the bathroom. It was an obvious sign. I considered checking his smartphone at one point, but I hesitated, feeling that it wouldn't bring me any joy. However, his actions were all too typical of someone guilty, and I could only view him with suspicion. As time went on, the conversations between my husband and me diminished. Moreover, his work on weekends increased, and we began living like ships passing in the night. One day, after some time had passed, I came home to find signed divorce papers on the table. Although I had anticipated this might happen, it was still unsettling to see it in front of me. I immediately called my husband. I just got home and saw the papers. What's going on? What do you mean? I mean it. I want a divorce. I knew something was off with you, but tell me the real reason. I've fallen in love with someone else. So, you've been cheating on me? No, this isn't cheating. I've really fallen for her. It might look like cheating to you. Given the situation, it's definitely cheating, isn't it? Does she know you're married? Yeah, she knows, well. My husband hesitated awkwardly. I was about to speak, thinking we needed to discuss this in person, not over the phone, when a familiar voice took over. Hello, Candace? It's me. Katie? Yes, it's Katie. I'm dating Scott now. And I'm thinking about marrying him. Hearing those words felt like a heavy stone dropping in my heart. My heart raced, and an unpleasant emotion seemed to choke me. What? You're thinking of marrying him? But Scott is my husband. I fell in love with Scott the moment I met him at your house. We exchanged numbers, and one thing led to another. What in the world? I mean, what are you thinking? Anger, emptiness, and sadness overwhelmed me. And I couldn't find the voice to accuse her properly. I do feel bad, you know? But it can't be helped. We were meant to be. I have you to thank for meeting him. I'm grateful for that. Katie expressed herself confidently, with no sign of feeling sorry. I could never forgive the betrayal by a friend I had been close to since school and by my husband. You don't feel bad at all. Put Scott back on. Scott said there's nothing left to talk about. Can you just sign the divorce papers and send them quickly? We need to have a proper discussion. There's no way I can agree like this. Tell him to come home. Ah, that's impossible. He's living with me now. There's nothing to talk about, right? You just need to sign the divorce papers. Was Katie trying to provoke me, or did she harbor some resentment? Either way, I felt nothing but distrust and irritation towards her. Just put my husband on the line. My raised voice did not seem to affect Katie, who snorted and replied with a laugh. No matter what you say, it's not happening. By now, I was left standing there, surprised, as the call was cut off abruptly. Sleepless nights followed, and Scott did not return during that time. The divorce papers lay on the living room table, seemingly waiting for my signature. Katie sent me numerous photos of her and Scott together, seemingly trying to show how close they were. My mental state was deteriorating, and it started to affect my work. So I decided it was time to take a proactive approach to the divorce and consulted a lawyer. I knew a lawyer and made an appointment to see him. The lawyer listened carefully as I explained my situation. What would you like to do? I responded without hesitation to the lawyer's question. I want a divorce. But I want them to face consequences. That's understandable. Let's file for compensation. We have plenty of evidence they've conveniently provided. Yes. I'll file a claim for compensation against Scott and Katie, and then end things cleanly. Please take care of this. Leave it to me. And although it may be none of my business, please make sure to eat well and get enough rest. Thank you. After speaking with the lawyer, I decided to make a clean break. They say time heals all wounds, and indeed, I was gradually able to look forward. I started eating normally again and could sleep without issues. The only thing I would lose was my husband. I had nothing else to lose, and no troubles. After such an ordeal, surely something good must be waiting. With that thought, I felt energized. A few days later, I received another message from Katie. Hey, are you still clinging to the past? I want you to divorce Scott quickly. How dare you? Are you out of your mind? I'm preparing for the divorce, so tell Scott. What? That's a lie, right? Do you think Scott is going to come back to you? I know what you're clinging to. It's his income, right? His income? Yeah, he runs a company that makes $500 million every year. You hid that from me because you knew I'd take him away from you, didn't you? He runs a company that makes $500 million every year? I won't let you say you didn't know. That's why you could afford such a mansion. He told you that? Yes. He told me everything. So just sign the divorce papers and move out of that house already. It's going to be mine now. Too bad Scott isn't coming back. I'll give you as much compensation as you like, you poor thing. Katie ended the call unilaterally again. Now I fully understood why Katie had targeted my husband. This call completely cooled any feelings I had for Scott. And I started thinking about life after divorce. The next day, I felt much clearer, perhaps thanks to Katie in a way. Today, the photos she sent of her and Scott only repulsed me. I shared everything with my lawyer. My health improved, and I managed to recover at work. Normalcy was finally returning. All that was left was to settle things with Scott and Katie. My lawyer acted as my representative and sent them a formal notice. Now, I just had to wait for their response. Their reaction came quickly. Hey! What are you thinking, sending a formal notice to my company? Katie was outraged, her angry voice echoing. Did you seriously think you could annoy me and get away with it? I was just sharing a bit of our happiness with you. It wasn't harassment. No, it was definitely harassment. Oh, right. Please speak to my representative from now on. That's it. Wait, hang on. I hung up the phone then. I could tell she was significantly shaken, which gave me a bit of relief. Calls from Katie continued to come in immediately, but I didn't answer them. Scott also tried to call me, and when he realized I wasn't answering, he sent complaints via email. The content proof sent to my parents' home exposed the affair and resulted in them scolding him. His email was full of selfish content, placing the blame elsewhere while ignoring his own actions. My contempt for my husband grew even more. After returning home, eating dinner, and taking a bath, I went to the bedroom and felt something was off. When I opened the closet, I noticed that some of my bags and accessories were missing, all of them brand name items. There was only one suspect I could think of. "You've got to be kidding, she stole from me?" I immediately reported this to my lawyer, who told me that we would need evidence to pursue this. Evidence, huh? That's when I remembered that when we built this house, we installed security cameras as a precaution. I had forgotten about them because I never had to use them. But when I checked the footage from one of the cameras, it was clearly recorded. I decided to check the surveillance cameras installed throughout the house. To my astonishment, the footage showed Katie, over several days, stealthily stealing the brand items while I was away. I got goosebumps. Realizing that I had been friends with such a person up to now felt terrifying. The next day, I took the video data to my lawyer, who was appalled. "This person, in a way, it's impressive. She's boldly stealing from someone's house. This will certainly serve as evidence. However, this is a separate issue from the divorce case. It's a criminal matter, you know?" "Yes, please pursue it thoroughly, sir." I said that to the lawyer with a smile, perhaps eerily calm. After all that had been done, what was there to hold back on? They should take full responsibility for their actions. Understood. But I think you should change your house locks. I agreed with the lawyer's advice and changed the locks on my house that very day. Afterward, there were numerous calls from Scott and Katie, but I ignored them completely. They even came to the house directly, but I did not hesitate to contact the police. After that, I received no more calls from Scott or Katie. A few days later, the lawyer informed me that the other party wanted to negotiate a settlement. He asked what I wanted to do, and I agreed to discuss it in his presence. I wasn't free enough to drag this out any longer and wanted to settle things quickly. The lawyer arranged the date, and on the day, we met in a room at his office. Then, on the day of the meeting, Katie and Scott burst into the room, throwing the door open violently. "So, we finally meet, you coward." "Stop it, Katie." "Because she's been running away all this time. It's because of her that our marriage plans have been delayed." Katie began to yell at me with such force. It seemed like she might actually throw something at me. Scott was desperately trying to stop her. Seeing them like this after so long, I felt pathetic for having to deal with such people. "Please calm down. If I see any violence or abusive language, I will call the police immediately. Is that clear?" The lawyer managed to settle things down for the moment, and Scott and Katie finally took their seats. Once everyone was seated, the discussion began. "Sir, you're seeking a divorce, correct?" "We agree to the divorce. However, given that your relationship with Ms. involved an affair, we will claim compensation. Do you have any objections?" "I don't care about anything as long as you agree to the divorce. But once you pay the compensation, I want to cut all ties with you forever." "Ma'am, is that acceptable to you?" "Of course. I have no desire to continue any relationship with them either. I spoke calmly while Scott appeared a bit shaken. But by then, I didn't care anymore. Next, regarding the compensation amount. As the lawyer was about to discuss the compensation, Katie interrupted. I said any amount is fine, didn't I? We have tons of money. Katie crossed her arms and spoke arrogantly. Hearing this, the lawyer adjusted his glasses with a quick gesture. Oh. A tremendous amount of money. Yes. You're a lawyer and you didn't even check? Listen, Scott is the CEO of a company with an annual revenue of $500 million. A compensation for an affair is nothing to us. We'll even give you a fair share of the assets. Your salary must be barely making ends meet. As Katie laughed confidently, the lawyer burst into laughter, unable to contain himself. Katie's face turned sour at the sight. What's so funny? Are you mocking me? As Katie questioned the lawyer in agitation. He wiped his tears with a handkerchief and calmed down. My apologies. I see now. That clears things up. The lawyer put down his handkerchief, looked at Katie, and smiled. Candace here is the CEO. He is just a regular employee there. What? At the lawyer's remark, Katie looked perplexed and snorted. If a fool hires a lawyer, that lawyer is a fool too. Let's face it. Did Candace trick you into thinking she was the CEO? Ah, that's sad. It's you who should check the reality. Did you confirm if that's true? Turning to Scott, the lawyer's comment made him pale. Seeing his reaction, Katie became anxious and started to question Scott. You said you're the CEO of a company making $500 million a year, right? You weren't lying, were you, Scott? Scott remained silent, only looking down and growing pale. Seeing his reaction, Katie also began to pale. Answer me. You weren't lying, right? You said you're the CEO of a company making $500 million a year, right? Come on. As Katie shook Scott's shoulders, he muttered just one word. Sorry. This apology plunged Katie into despair. Shaking, she turned towards us, slammed her hand on the table, and stood up. You're kidding, right? There's no way you're the CEO, Candace. I was closest to you, so there's no way I wouldn't know. As Katie, standing up, accused me, I decided it was time to tell her the truth. Just because we're best friends doesn't mean I tell you everything. Especially not about income. And because I was close to you, I knew how greedy you were for money. That's why I had no intention of telling you. As I looked straight at Katie without averting my eyes, she couldn't hide her disturbance and slumped down. So, that house is. Of course, the house is in my name. So the one who will have to leave is Scott. Oh, well, he's no longer my husband. Katie fell silent at that. Then, we will claim a reasonable amount for compensation. It was unclear whether Scott and Katie heard the lawyer's words as both remained silent. Moving on to the theft. The lawyer continued unfazed, watching the unchanged expressions of the two. It felt satisfying to hear. Theft? Yes. You entered the house while Candace was absent. And stole several brand name items, didn't you? When confronted about the theft, Katie bit her lower lip. Scott, apparently unaware of this, looked shocked. Hey, what's this about theft? I didn't do it. I don't know anything. Katie desperately feigned ignorance. But then the lawyer presented photos from the surveillance video. Both were speechless upon seeing them. What is this? It's footage from the surveillance cameras. Surveillance cameras. Katie was unaware of the cameras, as Scott had not told her. Well, if she had known, she probably wouldn't have stolen so boldly. Scott covered his face with his hands inside. We have surveillance cameras because when we made the house luxurious, it was for security reasons. Why didn't you tell me that earlier? Who would think you'd break in to steal? And that means you also stole the keys, right? I thought I had lost them. But I wanted the brand items. Scott wouldn't buy them for me. The two started arguing like that. Both the lawyer and I sighed in exasperation. Please save your arguments for later. We will proceed. Regarding this theft, we plan to file a police report. That concludes our discussion. Hearing the word police, Katie visibly panicked. Police? That's too much. It was just borrowing a friend's things. You won't really file a report, will you? I didn't say you could borrow them, and I no longer consider you a friend. Yes, I'm going to make sure to file a report for the theft. No. I'll compensate. I'll pay it back. Just don't call the police. Oh, you'll compensate? Do you realize the brand items you stole amount to more than 100 items? Plus, there's the compensation for damages. When I said this, Katie seemed relieved and turned to Scott. Hey. You're working even if you're not a CEO, so you can pay, right? It's okay, right? Scott just looked down silently at Katie's words. He can't afford to pay. He's been absent without leave and got fired. What? I told you he was working at my company, right? Ever since he started having an affair with you, his absences increased. I got reports. We can't keep such an employee, can we? No. But there's the division of assets. If we have that. You can't have the division of assets either. Why not? Isn't the savings we accumulated as a couple subject to division? Didn't you hear anything from Scott? You claimed he spilled all the beans, but you totally skipped the crucial bits. How convenient. The lawyer then smoothly presented a document. As per the prenuptial agreement, if the marriage doesn't last 3 years, neither party claims a division of assets. Since you're currently in the 2nd year of marriage, this applies. Katie grabbed the document, crumpled it, and began to tremble. What's this piece of paper? That is a notarized document, so it has legal force. But just because there's no division of assets doesn't mean Scott has no assets left. At that, Katie's face twisted into a wry smile. That's okay then. Scott, you have savings, right? So, we're fine, right? The Katie who was hanging on to Scott didn't look like the friend I once knew. There's none left. Because you kept spending it, Katie, there's no savings. As Scott said this, Katie collapsed to the floor. Seeing her like that, I felt no pity. She reaped what she sowed. That concludes our discussion. Please submit the divorce papers promptly, and sir, please pack your belongings and leave the house. Thank you. It was unclear whether Scott and Katie heard the lawyer. But we left the room, leaving the two slumped on the floor. I left the rest to the lawyer and went home. The divorce was finalized without issue. Scott packed his belongings under the supervision of the lawyer and left the house. I received several Romeo emails from him. But I blocked them completely and cut off all contact with Scott and Katie. Scott, now jobless and out of savings, ended up moving into Katie's place. But she too got fired due to the theft and had to undergo police questioning. They both desperately looked for work but only managed day-pay jobs. With immediate cash but poor at saving. Katie couldn't stop her spending habits and ended up getting evicted due to unpaid rent. Their plight became known to their families, and both were disowned by their parents. Unable to return home and paying off the compensation. While living in a shabby apartment with shared toilets and no bath. I heard from classmates living nearby that they sometimes see them at a local public bath. Looking completely different, worn-out clothes and all. As for me, work is going well, and I've joined a social tennis club as a new hobby. I enjoy keeping fit and improving myself. 6 months after the incident, I took a solo trip abroad and met a wonderful man. I'm currently dating him. I can't just erase the past. But it shaped me into the person I am today, and maybe that's why I'm truly happy now.